27th of June 2026. A pleasant good morning to you and a warm welcome to your breakfast show. Good morning, Sierra Leone, the program that's always starts your day with analysis and divergence of views on news and current happenings in the country. We are your presenters. I am Esther Sako.
And I am Emmanuel Samoa. Well, we start the program with the quote of the day. A quote of the day is from English novelist Arnold Bennett, and it says, "Always behave as if nothing had happened, no matter what has happened." When I see these quotes, it makes me to go back to yesterday. I would say it's just a little bit of drama with regards to the bar association. These are elections. You know, when the current executive put out a press release saying that they are going to postpone it, and then later in the day, Martina Igbenda, you also put out a press release questioning, you know, this decision. So it tells that according to Bennett's own side of the quote.
So should they behave as if nothing had happened?
No, Martina said she won't behave as if anything had happened, because nothing has happened, because, you know, she felt disadvantaged initially, so she's now questioning the process.
I'm quite sure they'll settle the dispute anyways.
But I don't know. These are the legal minds. You know, the reason why we keep on, you know, bringing this up, because we expect them to, you know, they are called the landed people. You know, the law profession.
Set the pace.
Yes, they're expected to set the pace. So if people are seeing all of these rancors, you know, the signal that it's sending, even to out of Sierra Leone. Because when you look at us, the journalists, you know, we have tried at least to conduct ourselves.
To hold the fort.
You know, because I believe they should somehow learn from us when it talks about putting systems and processes in place. Because for the sludge, you know, the executive is not the one that conducts election. We already have an electoral body conducting elections, and so and the electoral body has clear mandates to an extent now that we even have / electoral courts. You know, so you see all of these things. I believe
we just hope they settle their differences and push the bar forward, because in all of this, the bar is what matters. So they should try their best to ensure that they put the bar in front. Okay. So we move on with the program. Coming up in this edition of the program, the Health Alert condemns the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Country Planning and blames them for the frequent building collapse in the city.
And Ministry of Tourism launches One Reggae Festival Creative Clinic reports. And
Nikki Spencer-Coker declares the candidacy for Vice President for the Sierra Leone Bar Association, pledges unity and institutional renewal.
It's really interesting, the names that are now coming up.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, on that note, that's how we invite you to participate in the program by sending your text message to the number displayed on your screen, or send a comment on our Facebook page, slbc.sl. The program is Good Morning Sierra Leone, live on the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation Studios. The program is Good Morning Sierra Leone, live on the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation. You can be part of the conversation by sending your text message to the number displayed on your screen, or send your comment on our Facebook page at slbc.sl. Sometimes for us to usher in against the program. Health Alert has condemned the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Country Planning and blamed them for the frequent building collapse in the city. According to a release by the NGO, the rampant building collapse in the city of Freetown could be attributed to negligence, compromise and failure of the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Country Planning to develop policies and regulations that will regulate the construction of high-story buildings and also the lack of effective monitoring and insurance of building permits to these illegal and unprofessionals who claim to be contractors, thereby jeopardizing innocent citizens' lives in the municipality of Freetown. It should also be noted that building permits are being issued by the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Country Planning to landowners who wish to construct houses in any part of the city. Citizens have also raised concern that certain top officials of the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Country Planning allegedly connived with these fake contractors by issuing them with illegal building permits to dupe these house owners just to enrich themselves. Well, in the studio to talk more on this, we have the Executive Director of Health and that, Victor Lantana Koma. Good morning, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so we'll do digress more on the press release that you put out with regards blaming the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Country Planning for the building collapses that are going on in the country.
Okay, so you agree with me that this is not new. For several years now, we have had buildings collapsing in Freetown particularly, and dangerously, it's also affecting the lives of innocent citizens who probably might be occupying these buildings, or some of them actually doing businesses in these buildings. So there is a process, I mean, everybody knows for you to have to construct a building everywhere, there is a process you follow, and that process is so rigorous. And not only having the land, securing the land, and of course, even to secure the land, you have to get it through the Ministry of Lands because they are all there's a document for you. But then coming to the construction aspects, and then the linkage with the building permit, it's provided by law that for anyone to build or construct a house, any part of the country, you must have a building permit. That building permit is kind of a license that tells you that, okay, you are qualified, or whoever is going to build that house, right? Anywhere you want to build. That process is first and foremost, the individual should be able to submit all the documents that tells you that you are the owner of that land, your conveyance and all other relevant documents. The ministry inspect that and make sure that yes, you are the rightful owner of that document and the land you are claiming to have. And after that, the ministry should do inspection to see the site where in fact you are really constructing this building. Is it appropriate? Is it a place that is actually permissible? Is not prone to any disaster-prone areas and the likes? All of these are something that the ministry do, this assessment and everything, before they even come and they come back to start to talk about giving you the permission to go ahead with the process. And then they will do.
We apologize for that technical hitch as it was due to some technical problems. Now you were saying, continue with what you were saying.
So as I was saying, that after all of this processes, the visitation of the site, looking at whether the place is actually conducive, and then you look at your architectural designs to say, okay, I'm going to build 2-story or 3 stories, as the case may be, and whatever. Now it is the responsibility of the ministry to advise, first and foremost, not to even issue yet the permit, but to say, no, we have visited the site and we have seen that that location is not conducive for the type of building you want to construct there. They will look at the topography of the ground, see the swell and all of that things, and advise appropriately to say that place is good or it's not good at all. You will only be permitted to build maybe just a flat here and not anything beyond that. All of this comes from the ministry. That's why they have the professionals, they have the technical people. Before they now come to negotiate about the permit. And then even with the permit, whoever is going to do the construction must have to show who is going to be a contractor. Is this contractor a licensed person? Does it have the qualification that it takes for you to give the okay to say, okay, go ahead, we know you have had records of doing similar job and that kind of thing.
But I could vividly recall with regards to the incident at, was it Shell, where that building collapsed? I think 6 months ago, I couldn't remember the exact time. But there were complaints by the Ministry of Lands and other stakeholders that there is a challenge with regards to the influx of engineers who just, us Sierra-Leoneans, when they want to build houses, they just find someone from the blues and give them the projects to build their houses. At the end of the day, there is a challenge, and some of these buildings are not falling.
So that's exactly the point you are saying. That's what we are talking about, ineffective policies or lack of monitoring. That's exactly our point. As a ministry, I mean, it's unfortunate to say we have a challenge. Construction is not one day. It takes a process. For you to construct a house, it takes months. So if the policy would have been very effective to say this is the policy, we don't care whatever status you are, you want to construct a house in this city here, let's say here now. Maybe you will tell me about the prophecies because of the lack of personnel and the lack of whatever the resources to monitor. But in the city here, definitely there's nowhere or no way the ministry can say they have that challenge. So if they have this policy and they are actually following up to these policies and making sure that there are guys on the ground, right? So that's my problem.
Mr. Kuma, I want to hold you there asking the question because this is a very strong allegation, casting a blame on the whole ministry.
Of course.
And these blames and your press release, what is the yardstick did you guys use to cast blames on the ministry? And is it evidence-based?
Yeah, like I said, Samurai, it's practical. I mean, one thing about what happens in public domain every day, you don't need to go and do a research. Your colleague has just asserted here or something happened at PC here. We are not carried by maybe public opinion. We are carried by evidences of what happened on a daily basis with the lives of people. The problem here is most times when these things happen, we don't hold the appropriate people accountable or prosecuted. And that's the area. Because if some people are prosecuted, whether you are the landowner, you violate these laws, or you are a ministry official who has violated it, and then the public will start to see that, okay, there's really a stringent action that has been taken. That's what we are talking about here. Lives of people just go, and they will see quietly, we think nothing has happened, right? So this is what we are saying. How can we continue to have rampant system of this kind of nature, where the other day, one day or two or other days, you hear 5-story building collapse here? What's responsible for that? It's because, two, like I said, ministry is not providing oversight over these things. Two, the contractors that they are alleged to have professional or whatever are not well trained, like you said, like they rightly alluded that they don't have control. It's because there's no system. Otherwise, if you want to construct, the law says, come to us. It's we who give you. I mean, people who just claim the land, that's one thing in fact. Who issues the conveyance? Who issues you the land document? It's the ministry. So start from there, and then you talk about building now. If people know that this is the process that you have to go through, there are several times you have hosted your engineers, right? Who said these are professional bodies, they have established them, but hold and behold, people are not going through them, they are not being consulted, and people just rely on,
But it still speaks to us as Sierra Leoneans. I want to build these houses. Because some might think, okay, this certain engineer is very expensive compared to this one that's it's quite lower. They can prefer going to. It speaks to us as Sierra Leoneans. So what do you think?
So the point here is because there is an absence of policy, there's an absence of whatever the laws or whatever. I mean, to build a house, like I said, it's a lifelong event. It's not something you just want to create within a day. And there are people who are going to occupy that place, right? If you are not ready, then you are not ready. There's no problem with that. That's the point. So we are saying here is, if there are policies that are effective and they are working, right, and you know that these are the procedures, no matter whatever it is, you have to go through that procedure, then you have to wait for your land. But rather than to say, okay, I can take any cheap contractor or whatever because the professionals are so expensive, that's the point. And then what about the building materials you are going to buy? Are you going to adjust the price? Are you going to dictate what the prices are? You're going to buy them because you need them, and all of these things. So building itself from the procurement of getting the land to the construction is all expensive. So it's all expensive.
So Mr. Kuma, when I saw this your press release, it's also drew my attention to why did you just quietly cast the blames on the Ministry of Lands and also not bring in the NDMA in it? Because the NDMA also, they have within their pillars also to assess disasters before they occur. So the NDMA can look at certain lands and say, oh, this land is not suitable for such a construction. Because when construction is going up, it is also their responsibility to look at it and say, no, this building, this place, it should stop, it should not go above this. So it makes me to wonder why is quietly casting the blames on the Ministry of Lands, forgetting about the NDMA.
You know, have got to call vicarious liability. Yeah. Hold those who actually within the bear the greatest responsibility.
But don't you think it's a coordinated approach?
So we are saying, I have no problem. An NMDA is an agency, but not above the functions of the Ministry of Lands. Don't forget, listen to the name: Ministry of Land, Housing and Country Planning. Any other agency, right, that's doing anything that has to do with lands issue must go through the ministry. It's the ministry that has the expertise to advise appropriately, and not NMDA. They can advise on disaster-prone area to say, okay, yes, this. So again, that's where the synergy comes in, right? And then the ministry will say, okay, because we have technical people at NMDA, right, let's also consult them, work in partnership with them to do all our holistic assessment. That's what we are saying here. But for me, there's no institution I can hold accountable rather than the ministry, because that has the mandate, that's how the constitutional provision to do what we are saying here, rather than the NMDA. That's my point, and I stand by that.
Okay, thank you very much. Continue to stay with us. He is Victor Lansana Koma, the Executive Director of Health Alert, and casting blames on the Ministry of Lands and Country Planning for the continuous collapse of buildings in Sierra Leone. Well, the Good Morning Sierra Leone program continues, and now we go over to the bar. Well, the 2026 Sierra Leone Bar Association presidential election has sparked a highly contested campaign season. Incumbent President Tuma Adama Jabi, also known as Tuma Adama Gento Kama, officially announced a bid for re-election under the campaign theme Raising the Bar, Securing the Gains. The main challenger, Martina Bendu Igbenda, has emerged, focusing on creating a united, empowered bar. Igbenda has publicly raised concerns regarding difficulties SLBA members are facing in regularizing their subscription payments ahead of voting. However, in a public notice issued yesterday, 1st June, the Sierra Leone Bar Association has postponed its annual general meeting, originally scheduled for June 5th and 6th, 2026, due to what they say, quote and unquote, logistical and other challenges beyond the control of the directors. Regardless, the campaigns still continue, as today in the studio we have a renowned legal practitioner, Nikki Spencer Coker, who is vying for the vice president position of the Sierra Leone Bar Association. Nikki Spencer Coker is an inspirational advocate for the empowerment of women in Sierra Leone, who has practiced as a barrister and solicitor of the High Court of Sierra Leone for nearly 14 years, highlighting a career spanning both national and international service. She previously served as state counsel at the Law Officers Department and later as defense counsel with the Legal Aid Board Sierra Leone, where she represented indigent clients. Nikki Spencer Coker became a household name in the early 2000s, not only because of her comforting voice as a radio broadcaster on the Saturday Breakfast Show on Capital Radio, but also because of her feminism and advocacy for the rights of women and girls. Over the years, she has trained and inspired many women and girls in schools and slums on issues such as parent-child communication, sexual reproductive health, life skills, peer education, livelihoods, and survival skills. She focuses on gender equality, health education, human rights, and non-violence against women, including sex workers and street children. Well, good morning and welcome to the program, Nikki Spencer Coker.
Can I have that right up? I mean, I need that. That's what I need for my profile. Thank you very much.
Well, I'll give you the right up.
Thank you.
You know, Nikki Spencer Coker, you're a broadcaster, used to be a broadcaster and also a legal professional. So, your profile is not an hidden secret. It's out there. So, firstly, between Team Egbenda and Team Gento, where does Nikki falls?
First, let me just say, you said something at the beginning that I want to make absolutely clear, that this is not the first time we've had elections at the bar or, vying candidates. There have been years and years and years in which you have multiple candidates vying for positions, so not me. And even to the point of sometimes it becomes, rancorous during the election process. But when we're done, we all together as lawyers and we move on, right? Once the election process is done. So I don't, Martina Benda has announced her candidacy under a Unite the Bar platform, and when I announced and made the decision to go in for the position of vice president, I also I'm coming in under the platform of the Unite the Bar, moving forward as we go into the years of the future of the Sierra Leone Bar Association and for lawyers. And so if you want to call it a team, then yes, you would say that I'm Team Ebanda, definitely.
So you were coming saying that Unite the Bar. One might be thinking, does Nikki Spencer Coker has all what it takes to unite the bar?
Wow.
Joining Egbenda.
Well, I mean, you were so gracious to give that beautiful profile, which is true, by the way, and I am confident and believe in my ability to speak to everybody, and to be and I'm not an unknown entity. I'm known within the circle of lawyers, and I don't think anybody could say, oh, this is a woman that we can't speak to, within the confines of who lawyers are. So if we're talking about, if we accept as lawyers, and we do have to accept it at this point, that there's some disunity amongst us, I am also putting myself out there and confident in and making that commitment that what I would like to see happen is for us to come together to the table again, all of us. So do I have confidence in my ability to be able to do that, to assist in doing that? Yes.
So when you say bringing lawyers together, looking at everything that has happened, and even before now, we knew the Bar Association as a very formidable government body, holding government accountable on serious national issues. And when you look at what is happening now, one might be saying, arguably, the Bar has not been that strong when it comes to these issues holding government accountable since the conduct of the previous election. looking at this particular dynamic, do you think voting you as vice president, will see that bar that we used to recognize as the bar that we knew?
Well, I mean, it would be height of arrogance for any one person, whatever position you're vying for, to believe that you alone can do it. I don't think, I would definitely not take that position, and I don't think in good conscience anybody for any of the positions, including those vying for the presidency of the Bar Association, can believe that they alone will be able to do all those things. The executive of the bar is a team, however they come in, and you work collectively as well as along with the members of the association, which is a body of lawyers, to to advance the decisions or the aims of the association. And you don't do it unilaterally by yourself. You just wake up in the morning and decide you're going to do what such and such. It is the decision and with the backing and the mandate and the ratification of the members of the association. And when you have a bar association that is working effectively and with the most positive gains, is when you have an association that has all of those things in place. An executive that's working together, backed by the membership, who decide and dictate and put forward those issues of public interest that they believe the bar should advance or to speak on. So that is what I believe as an association we should and can get back to. That sort of camaraderie and recognition of our position in society as quote unquote the learned, to whom much is given, much is expected. And so, but if we as an association or as professionals cannot even agree on basic things, it makes it very difficult to take those kind of stances that you're talking about.
Okay, so my Mr. Okay, you did mention that this is not the first election that you've been having back and forth, but at the end of the day you come together as one. But the last election, you can agree with me that it's actually gave birth to another son, or as a daughter, the Law Society.
The Law Society.
So if you are elected vice president, how would you bridge that gap that is present? Because many times now the Bar Association will say before now they were in the forefront championing issues of governance, but now you can agree with me that whenever there are issues that are happening, you only see press releases from the Lawyer Society. So how would you bridge that gap between these two associations that are pushing forward for the law profession as a whole?
Well, as individuals in society, be you a lawyer or not, you have the freedom of association, right? So you have the freedom to belong wherever you choose to belong. And as such, with its lawyer society, so lawyers have the privilege to be affiliated or to be wherever they please. But our position, my position, is that as a profession, we are stronger as stronger under one association. So whatever it takes for us in the future to get to that point again, we should be in the position as mature adults to be able to talk to each other, to find out, to work things out. And that's really where we're going and where we're proceeding with that. That the Sierra Leone Bar Association, it's the oldest, you hear that phrase all the time, but it's true. It's the oldest bar association in sub-Saharan Africa. Not just within, lawyers are not the only ones interested in what's happening in Sierra Leone. Lawyers outside of Sierra Leone in the region are interested in what is happening with our association and how we conduct ourselves. So it behooves us to, maybe find that pathway and be committed to that pathway of talking to each other, dialogue, and figuring out a way forward together.
Okay, so I continue to with us with the program. She's Nikki Spencer Coker, and she's vying for the vice presidency for the Sierra Leone Bar Association. Well, we take a healthy, but today we look at what is sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is a condition that causes you to stop breathing while you sleep. Your brain tries to protect you by waking up just enough to breathe, but these frequent wake-ups prevent you from getting restful, healthy sleep. Let us watch and learn from a healthy one today.
Ever wake up exhausted, even after a full night's sleep? Or maybe someone else has told you they're worried about your snoring. It could be sleep apnea, and it's more serious than you might think. Sleep apnea is more than just snoring. It's a condition where your breathing prevents you from getting the deep, restful sleep your body needs. There are two types of sleep apnea. The most common is obstructive sleep apnea, which is when your throat muscles relax while you're asleep and block your airway. When your body senses a lack of oxygen, it wakes you up just enough to breathe, and it can happen over and over throughout the night, often without you even realizing it. Central sleep apnea is less common. It occurs when your brain doesn't send the right signals to your breathing muscles. If you have obstructive or mixed sleep apnea, you might find yourself waking up gasping for air. But some people have no idea it's happening to them at all. Other common signs include snoring loudly, waking up often during the night, and waking up with headaches in the morning. You may feel exhausted or groggy during the day, and even experience mood changes like depression or anxiety. In kids, sleep apnea can show up as restlessness or behavioral issues. If it's not treated, sleep apnea can lead to serious health concerns like high blood pressure, stroke, and problems with your heart. But the good news is that sleep apnea is treatable. The path to a diagnosis usually starts with a sleep study, which takes place either in a lab or at your home. From there, your treatment may include sleep devices like a CPAP machine to keep your airway open at night. If you have a CPAP intolerance, your provider may recommend a treatment called hypoglossal nerve stimulation, or a mouthpiece to reposition your jaw or tongue while you sleep. Your provider may also recommend certain lifestyle changes, like changing your sleep position or trying to lose weight. In some cases, medications or procedures to help prevent blockages to your airways can also help. Only a healthcare provider can help you figure out what treatment is best for you, and that starts with getting a proper diagnosis. So, if you suspect you might have sleep apnea, don't ignore it. Better sleep and better health is within reach.
Learn from a health tip of today. Well, the program is Good Morning Sierra Leone and it continues. The Ministry of Tourism and Cultural Affairs has launched the One Nation Reggae Festival Creative Clinic Report with government officials, cultural stakeholders, students, musicians, and development partners calling for stronger investment in Sierra Leone's creative and cultural industries. The event highlighted the importance of branding, cultural tourism, youth participation and collaboration in transforming Sierra Leone's creative sector into a tool for national development and international recognition. In the studio, we have the Research and Development Officer, Monument and Relics Commission, Ministry of Tourism and Cultural Affairs. And he is Francis Musa Momo. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Greetings.
Okay, so tell us about this report. What prompted the ministry to do such a report on this One Nation Reggae Festival?
Oh, it's an important question, and it helps me to track back what the ministry did initiate in 2025, which is the One Nation Reggae Festival. So the One Nation Reggae Festival was really positioned in Sierra Leone as a space for cultural convergence. So there's this idea of where the global diaspora, African diaspora, meets Africa, right? So, and using Sierra Leone as that hub that get that creative experience. So when we say about the creative experience, it's really looking at the detailed identities of Sierra Leone and how we can use that to market Sierra Leone from a tourism perspective, showcase Sierra Leone from a cultural perspective. So whether it's our music, it's the gastronomy, the food, the lived experiences, all this form a corpus for identity, social cohesion, and use that to mark sustainable development. So that was the idea of the One Nation Reggae Festival, and that was successful. It became the biggest reggae festival in Africa last year. So, and the manifest functions for the One Nation Reggae Festival align and in the agenda having the creative clinic. So we're talking about the creative clinic report because there was an intentional agenda on the One Nation Reggae Festival 2025, which is bringing all cultural and creative stakeholders into a room so that they can assess what's happening with the sector and then provide profile solutions to the challenges facing the creative sector. So, and I want to make this clear that it was also building on efforts that have happened in the sector for years, right? So we with the creative clinic is just looking at practical models on how you can socially engineer this space and then bring models that really shift a paradigm in the sector and how people have perceived the sector over time. So
Francis, I want to hold you there, and this is a report. What are some of the key findings that this report during this investigation or survey that you did, the report that you put out? What are some of the key findings you guys made?
So I was coming to that. I was just laying a premise to why we had the creative clinic. So let me just answer you again, and then I could build on that. But one of the key challenges that came up at the creative clinic, and as it is highlighted in the reports from the cultural custodians and stakeholders, we had first in numbers, we had 4 plenary sessions, we had over 11 plus panel and speakers, we had 2 diaspora community meetings, which is Africa and the Caribbean and wider Atlantic world converging in Sierra Leone, and then we had an original composition, which is making of the truth beats in the studio session. So one of the key highlighted challenges that was mentioned was the fragmented framework around the creative sector in Sierra Leone, right? So, and what I mean by fragmented framework, that there has not been this systems lens of looking at the creative sector. So what the creative stakeholders at the clinic really paid attention to is looking at the creative sector not as an isolated piece in the broader creative economy, right? So it brought this idea of a systems perspective that the musician can have all of this creative mind, but if you don't have public policy aligned with that creative mind, it can still not give the creative an economic empowerment. So for instance, I wake up and conceive an idea and then I put it out there, but there is no intellectual property protecting my idea, right? So for instance, if you say there is a fragmented space, you public policy aid that as well. So you have laws, or if it's obsolete, how do you reform that law and then make it meet the evolving situation and emerging situations in the sector. So for instance, skills gaps as well is an identified challenge, where how many creatives are open to tech even, right? So how many creatives are open to sound engineering for as well. So they look at this in the clinic, or when they took the creative sector to the lab, or as we name the creative clinic report, they really diagnose some of these challenges and then look at the untapped potentials of it. So for instance, let us look at just the history and heritage connection with Sierra Leone with the wider Atlantic world. How have we managed telling that story and attract global visibility for Sierra Leone? That is a very deep question, right? So you go across the world, you mention this country, a lot of people are attracted to it based on the history that they know.
So Francis, I want to hold you there and also say this. In the past, government in administration out to have ministers in, ministers out, all have been bringing ideas on how to transform Sierra Leone tourism sector and the creative sector. You know, at the end, it's as if we are going around and then we are coming back to the same place, not moving forward. So this particular creative clinic that you've created and these reports that has identified challenges, the gaps, what difference will Sierra Leoneans see in the not too distant future as a result of this type of initiative?
Okay, it is important. It is never gonna change that people will come in and go out. That's not gonna change. It's gonna move as it evolves, right? But it's the intentionality to change the paradigm in the sector, right? So when you looked at this, one of the diverging perspective of the creative clinic was to move away from this traditional talk show. We talk a lot and then we don't act. So basically, we don't create we can create a system, but we don't have a structure, and we are not accountable to the system that we created. So one of the practical models that is trying to institutionalize the creative clinic report is, for instance, there's this gap of we don't have the infrastructure. So and if you say you don't have the infrastructure, meaning people need to now energize themselves to focus on the practice of how creative sector work globally and best practice for it. So one of the things that happened after the creative clinic report and based on the challenge of an infrastructure was the Ministry of Tourism and Cultural Affairs situated itself to provide the sector with a creative village. So that is a process ongoing now. The physical space is there. It's being plotted. People are going to use that, you understand? And then even young students that are into architecture, that are into designs, we're going to work with those people, with faculty, to build good design that aligns with the cultural values and models of Sierra Leone or lived experiences of Sierra Leone and then bring that to the fore. That is a critical space.
Okay, so Mr. Mo, moving forward, what were the recommendations that were put out in this report so as to create that space in the creative sector?
Yeah, so the recommendations are key, and like I said, we paid attention to move away from this traditional thing where in all my adult life in Sierra Leone, most of our questions are towards government. Most of our questions are towards government. But so in this creative report, there's this recommendation of, okay, we as individuals or we as creatives, if we have one thing that we want to do, what would we do, right? The government, if government, what we want you to do for us? So I just mentioned IP reforms, right? So they're asking government to IP reform, asking government for space, infrastructure, and for instance, the ministry has given you the platform to come discuss this. That is key, and it is providing the physical space in the creative village. It is creating a platform in the One Nation Reggae Festival where collaborations are being born, right? So and then you have the recommendation from us, creative people who were in the room. What do you, if we say, just say one thing that you want your sector to do? Professionalism itself. How do creatives themselves be professional? How do the creatives themselves hone their crafts, right? So that they can, in terms of management and the processes that aligns with their activities, are also benchmarked for positive gains for Sierra Leone. So, like I was mentioning at the Creative Clinic report launch, how do you abide to contract as a creative person? You are an artist. They call you to come perform at 2 o'clock. You come at 5 o'clock. Right? So it means, first of all, that you don't respect your craft. You don't respect the space that is being created for you. So there's a lot of synergies that really need to be worked upon, okay, to bridge the gaps that exist in the creative sector.
Okay, so thank you very much. It is Francis Musa Momo who has been talking about the Creative Clinic report. We hope this particular initiative this time around works for the creative sector. We still have with us Victor Lansanako, who has, for Health Alerts, who has shifted blames on the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Country Planning for the continuous collapse of buildings in the country. Mr. Puma, one thing just came to mind. Someone texted me personally saying that this particular statement that this man is making, is he not doing advocacy for the engineers to get contracts?
That's beautiful, interesting. Okay, so there are also Sierra Leoneans, and as a matter of fact, you will agree with me that they have raised those concerns severally here on this very medium, and without actually alluding to say I am advocating for them, but the fact remains here is we also need to have professionals engaged in doing this kind of work. It's unfortunate that in my message or in my press, you saw I also brought in, the aspect of these illegal contractors, right? And also I also mentioned about the poor materials, right? So you'll find out that, where you have professionals that actually understand the job, and of course they know exactly measurement, for everything. Construction is a measurement, it's the standard, everything is a quality, and that's why you need professionals. And so, because it's not cheap, it's so expensive, right, to construct a house. It's painful for somebody to construct a house up to about 4 or 5 story buildings, and all of a sudden, for it to go down the drain. It's painful. You imagine that. You can imagine how the impact, the emotion, the psychological torture that individual may have faced, having, got in his mind that I have spent this huge money for somebody to build this, So if there is a regulation, right, by the ministry to say, and like I said, towards the end of my press, I also said, people should be prosecuted if they are found violating this. For instance, if you are not a contractor, you are not a trained professional contractor, right? And then you are caught. When the Ministry of Lands is doing their monitoring and they meet such people on that site doing that, and they don't have qualified people to do that, they need to be prosecuted. These are the people that they need to be brought to justice for such action. So once they start doing that, everybody now know that, okay, I think actually the ministry is now up its gears, because that's the mandate. The Act provides for that. They know that they have regulations to do that. They also know that they are guided to do that. But if they are not doing that, they just relax. Why not blame them?
So, Mr. Koma, apart from putting out press releases and going to media houses, have you tried engaging the Ministry of Lands and Country Planning?
Oh yes, I'm a frequent guest or visitor to the Ministry of Lands. I know exactly what happened. I can sit here and I call you names for ministry officials that I always visit and I talk to. You know, even when this issue came up regarding this, I had to, this is the same excuse they will tell you.
So
that.
Moving forward, what are your recommendations as head alert?
I have already provided that my press, and I said, one, the ministry should be able to make sure that these policies, the public is aware of them, bring out all of those stakeholders that are concerned, whether they are owners, landowners, or whoever the contractors might be. Bring them to a seminar, bring them, let's start to educate the public. Let them start to educate the very people who are engaged in this kind of thing. So say, ministry will not tolerate that. Ministry will come up with this very strong kind of actions that whoever will be found, and that's why I mentioned that's where the connivance comes in, because if they are not doing that, definitely, in our opinion, we think it's part of conniving.
So
with them.
what role would you play? Because it's not about casting blames on the government. What role would you play as health alert in engaging even citizens in the country? Because I made mention of some people preferring going for the cheaper engineers compared to those that are professionals.
So that's why we have started here. That's exactly what we started here to do. I started doing that even before coming here. But we'll continue to engage the public, through our community engagements, because the reason why Health Alert is so passionate about this, we are talking about the life of people. For each time you hear of this collapse, you must hear that 2-3 lives have been affected there, either by any by means of death or whatever it is. So it's a concern for us as a health organization to say that these kind of things are the things that we will continue to advocate for. We will continue to make sure we engage the general public, but principally the ministry is the head, because they should be able to bring in these partners, and we are always open to make our statement, to make our voices be heard wherever they need us.
Okay, so thank you very much. He is Victor Lantana Koma, the Executive Director of Health Alert, who has blamed the Ministry of Housing, Country Planning for the continuous collapse of buildings in Sierra Leone. I will still have with us Nikki Spencer Coker, Vice Presidential Aspirant for the Sierra Leone Bar Association. Nikki, I have this question. I don't want to be demeaning, but there's this normal perception that women hardly work together. Coming as a Vice President, you are going to work under the agenda of one of the presidential aspirants. Do you think with the niche you created for yourself over the years, you would bend or rather subdue to working with the agenda of either of the candidates or aspirants?
Well, that's a ridiculous assertion. So anybody who knows me knows that would be my response, that it's a ridiculous assertion that women don't work together. I have been in numerous arenas, associations, work groups, what have you, where women are working together now and in the past, and I'm sure the same will be true in the future. So, that's, the Female Lawyers Organization is all women, they're all working together, that's one. I'm just, the examples abound. It's a very lazy assertion to say women will not work together. And I've put myself out for the candidacy for vice president. So clearly, I would be working with whoever would emerge as president. Yeah, it's sometimes you've asked me the question, I have to respond, but really, it's a ridiculous assertion. Women don't work together. It's not true. We all know, we have plenty of examples in society where women work together. So yeah, no.
So let's say in a case, worst case scenario, you are not elected vice president of the Sierra Leone Bar Association. How would you work with the executive that might emerge as the winner in ensuring that you unite the bar?
I've been involved in bar association activities since I came into the Sierra Leone Bar in 2012. So, and consecutive executives, tap into my expertise or help or organizing or whatever the case may be, or, even when asked or not asked, I'm involved in some way, shape or form. So I don't anticipate, that all of a sudden, disappears from my own personal makeup, just because I don't win something.
So this question may be technical. Personally, do you think the outcome of this election will really unite the bar? Because the public is watching. As I earlier said, the bar association is one critical body that before now, government in government, and let me say, when the bar speaks, they listen because they knew that you guys, you are not playing. You talk on issues, especially issues that are borders around national development. So this is the reason why I'm asking. I'm asking the question, something that man out there might be thinking. So do you think the outcome of this election could really unite the bar?
You have a set of candidates who have put themselves forward as that being their, one of their major commitments. So I think that all of us, the public, can, rest assured, that with those candidates winning, Martina Benda, myself, that, that's the commitment, that there's a recognition that is important, not just for lawyers, but for the public at large. This is something that's raised over and over and over and over again. The disunity, the rancor, the bad feelings. And so, these candidates have put themselves forward, making that as part of their commitments. So I'm very confident that with a win, that lawyers and the public will see significant and positive strides towards that.
Okay, so thank you very much. That she is Nikki Spencer Coker, Vice Presidential Aspirant for the Sierra Leone Bar Association. I wish you good luck.
Wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
And I hope you win.
Thank you.
So we move to another segment of the program, which has to do with the review of a local tabloid. The first speaker I have here this morning is the Pyramid newspaper, and its banner headline says, Court reporters adopt new constitution. Reggae festival report unveiled in Freetown. CSOs demand tobacco control council. The stories and many more you can find on the Pyramid newspaper.
And the next one I have here is the Independent Observer newspaper that says, Mr. President, can we talk part 400? And VP Julia Jallo aims rebirth of government printing. Where is Dr. Dennis Bright? A bar association losing its voice. These stories plus more you find in the Independent Observer newspaper. Arthur Pierce research shows SLPP survival arithmetic no longer works. This is according to the Renaissance newspaper. Court reporters praise Chief Justice, Commander and Judiciary. And Sierra Leone Bar Association postpones AGM and its elections in a surprise no states. Well, the stories that many you can find on the Renaissance newspaper. And the next one association is making the headlines. I tell you, the Nature newspaper is saying parliamentarians lead green investment talks. EU Sierra Leone mark 50 years of partnership. This story is plus more you find in the Nature newspaper. The final page is the Standard Times newspaper. This banner headline says, Parliamentarians for Climate Finance holds National Green Investment Dialogue. Our vision for Salon is not of dependency, Vice President Julia Jallo reveals. And IGI launches Salon Development Scorecard to track government's performance. Well, this is the menu we can find on the Standard Times newspaper. And the final one I have here is the Satellite newspaper that says, as they return to electoral dialogue, Edmond Alpha welcomes APC's participation. Under unclear circumstances, APC stalwart founded in Lunge Hotel. Usman I. Kanu appointed new Solicitor General. Well, viewers will must remind you that the views here there, they do not reflect the views of the SLBC. We are merely reviewing the headlines of our local tablet. Well, we still have with us our guest, Victor, before we go in 30 seconds, what will be your party shot out there?
So I will continue to appeal to the Minister of Lands and Country Planning. As we all trust that that's their function, that's their mandate, to ensure that at least they revisit their policies to make sure that at least start holding those contractors accountable, bring them to justice if possible, or train them if they wish so, because that's very important also, so that at the end of the day, we will not continue to hear this kind of, sad news all the while. Buildings are collapsing here and there. There must be something that is responsible for that, and they should trace and make sure they work around that.
Okay, so Mr. Francis, 30 seconds, your party shot.
It's very important to state here this morning that the reports, the Creative Clinic report itself, is aligned with the tourism strategy plan, where we look at culture, immersive experiences as drivers for economic growth, tourism, national rebranding, tourism growth, and also economic diversification. It's important for us to note that.
So Madam Nikki Spencer Kuka, in 30 seconds, I want you to campaign.
Oh, well,
talk to your members.
We're going into an annual general meeting of the Sierra Leone Bar Association. Yes, we are going to go into it. Yes, we've had an announcement of postponement, but that doesn't deter any of us. That we'll be going forward, and we will be moving forward to uniting the bar. So I want to ask all like-minded members of the association to continue to exercise patience and to be assured that victory will be ours at the end of the day.
Okay, so thank you very much, Esther. This is how we draw the curtains of today's edition of Good Morning Sierra Leone.
Many thanks to our producer Daphne Zainab Kamara. Will quickly take our quote of the day, and it's from English novelist Arnold Bennett, and it says, "Always behave as if nothing had happened, no matter what has happened." Well, good morning, Sierra Leone. Thanks tomorrow. I am Esther Sako.
And I have been Emmanuel Samuel. Stay glued to the SLBC.
Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.